Hello, I'm chess expert Gil Luna. This video is on defending against the passed pawn. All right, it's very critical in endgames to know how to stop passed pawns. And this is part of our defense series for defending. And it takes some precise calculation, but a lot of these positions that look lost actually have ways to save them. So that's really what we're going to work on here, how to save yourself from a passed pawn. So in this position, both these pawns are promoting, all right? This is promoting in one and promoting in one. So let's see if you can find a way to stop them both. All right, so go ahead and pause the video, take as much time as you need, and try to stop these passed pawns. Okay, so the answer to this is bishop to c4. And this check is very strong because what's happening is it's not only checking the king, it's also getting ready to take the e-pawn. Now you might be asking yourself, wait a minute, can't the king just take the bishop? Yes, it can. All right, so after king takes bishop, white plays king takes pawn. And now, in order for black to hold on to the pawn, king c3 is necessary. And then the king goes in front of the pawn. And here you have the classic stalemate position with king and pawn, where the king either moves out of the way and loses the pawn or defends the pawn and stalemate. All right, so let's look at that again. Bishop check, king takes bishop, king takes pawn, only move not to lose the pawn, in front of the pawn, and stalemate. So here you might be saying, okay, what if I don't take the bishop? Well, if you just move the king out of the way, then the bishop will take the pawn, and one pawn has been stopped, and as soon as black promotes, the other pawn will be captured as well. So it's a perfect way to defend this position. All right, let's go to the next problem. All right, so in the first problem, you had to directly stop the pawn. Okay, you had to directly stop the pawn from promoting. That was the only way to save the game at that point. Sometimes when you reach a certain position, you can't actually stop the pawn. You have to think about what you can do after the pawn promotes. And this is one of those type of positions. If you look at it closely, you'll see that you can't actually stop the pawn. So go ahead and pause the video, take as much time as you need, and try to figure out what to do. All right, so if you played king e5, you were correct. All right, king e5 is the correct move in this position. Now, it looks a little strange because you might be asking yourself, wait a minute, the king is never going to catch the pawn, right? The pawn's promoting in two moves, never going to catch the pawn. So why king e5? Well, you need to create space for the bishop. So after the pawn goes forward, you play bishop here, and the pawn promotes again. And we have this very nice bishop skewer of the king and queen. All right, so let's look at that. We move our king out of the way, the pawn moves forward, we get our bishop back, promote, and then very nice bishop skewer. So here the queen is lost and the game is a draw. You have saved yourself. Now, if white sees this and decides just to move the king, not to get skewered, it doesn't help, because then the bishop will still just go here and be able to stop the pawn from promoting. Now, if you saw king e5 but thought of bishop f5, you had the right idea, but it was the wrong move. All right, because this doesn't work out the same way. Yes, after promote, you still have a bishop skewer, but the difference is in this position, the king and queen will be connected, and the queen can just take the bishop. So here you would lose this position instead of drawing it with bishop to d5. All right. Sometimes these positions look impossible and the pawn looks impossible to stop, but there's a way. So always keep this in mind when you're playing chess. Let's go to the next problem. All right, so here you have to take the idea that you learned in the first problem, in the second problem, I'm sorry, in the one that we just did. All right, here we have this pawn getting ready to promote in two moves. All right, and You have to, is there a direct way to stop this pawn? Well, that's for you to figure out. So go ahead, pause the video, take as much time as you need, and try to figure out what to do. Okay, so the correct move in this position is king to d7. All right, with the same idea that we used in the last problem, but a little different. So after the pawn moves forward, we have to move our king again. All right, because what we're doing is we're supporting this square. So we can put this bishop on this diagonal. So after queen, we have bishop check, and the queen and king are skewered again. Now, after the king moves out of the way, the queen gets captured. And just like in the last problem, if you say, okay, well, I'm not going to let that happen, I'm just going to move my king, well, the bishop is still going to come to c3 and, f6 and capture the pawn on a1. All right, so there's no way to stop it. And if you play a direct king e4, yeah, see this bishop there, and that's it. All right, let's go to the next problem. Okay, this one is my favorite one. All right, this one is my favorite one because it's not an easy move to see, especially for new players, but it's a great idea. It's a brilliant move. So let's take our time. Go ahead, pause the video, take as much time as you need, and try to figure out the answer to this problem. Okay, so the correct move in this position is rook to e1. Now, if you found this, kudos to you, because it's not easy to see. Not only are you allowing them to promote, but you're allowing them to promote by taking your rook and immediately promoting. But here's the trick. If pawn takes rook queen, now once again, you have a bishop skewer. All right, look at that. Now the king has to move out of the way, and the queen is lost. So the pawn cannot take the rook. So let's say we play rook e1 and the king takes the rook. All right, go ahead, pause the video and see if you can figure out what to do next. All right, so if the king takes the rook, we move the bishop to this side of the board and the pawn is pinned. Now on the next move, regardless of what black does besides bishop check, which will buy him one move, we're going to take this pawn and the game will be a draw. So look at that fancy move. Rook there. Whatever they capture with, you're getting skewered either on this side of the board or that side of the board. Now, if you say, okay, well, I'm not going to take at all. All right, what if we just do bishop check? All right, you can do bishop check. The king moves to a safe square. You still can't take the rook. So the king moves over in order not to get skewered, but then you can just move the rook right here in the front of the pawn for this little nifty move. So now you're threatening to take the pawn in one. So you might be saying, wait a minute, can't the bishop just take my rook? Yes, it can. But after bishop takes rook, we play bishop a5, and the pawn is lost on the next move. And the game is a draw. So once again, a lot of you might have analyzed this position and said, wow, this looks like it cannot be saved. There's absolutely nothing I can do to stop that pawn from promoting in one. Well, rook e1. If you found it, excellent. Next position. All right, so here we go again. Black is promoting in one. Take your time, pause the video, and see if you can figure out what to do. All right, so here the move is king to e4. All right, so this is a nice little tricky move. What you're doing is you're getting this king out of the way. Now, why are we getting this king out of the way? Well, we need to be able to move this pawn. So here, after black promotes, you have a discover check. You have check to the king and discover on bishop takes queen, and the queen is lost. Problem solved. All right, and there's really nothing else. Regardless of what black does, you're still going to push the f pawn up, and you're going to be able to cover this square. All right, so let's look at that again. King over, promote, check, and thank you for the queen. All right, next position. All right, here we go. We have two pawns getting ready to promote. One is promoting and one. And in this situation, you also have a pawn that's about to promote. So go ahead and pause the video, take as much time as you need and try to solve this problem. Okay, so here, the correct answer is bishop to d7. Now, not only are we threatening our own promotion, but we're capturing this pawn over here on h3. And by capturing this pawn in h3, we are also covering the f1 square. So if black decides to play king takes pawn, we just take, we're covering that square, and the game is a draw. Now, if black tries to get fancy and get out of it with the double promotion, with promoting and letting us promote, black will get checkmated. So let's look at this. Let's say we have f1 equals queen. Now we promote. The difference is we're promoting with check. Now this would have made a huge difference if the king would have been on this white square right here and black would have promoted with check. But because the king is safe over here on a5, we're able to get away with this. So now after check, only move. Why don't you go ahead and pause the video and see if you can find checkmate in 2. All right, so queen c7 check, king a8, and mate. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you learned something and I hope you enjoyed this video.